seen here, we've got a big patch of fiberglass filler there that I need to sand back once I take this ladder off. There's a bit of rust running down here, and in here, which I've cut out and fixed up, and then pretty much all along there as well. So, I mean, none of it was majorly structural, but yeah, it did need to come out, it needed to be fixed. Lots of sanding and fiberglass. It's great. I promise there's not anything else. The craziest part is, whilst I've been mucking around in this bus, my darling girl Katie has been creating a 12-piece collection to be showcased in Paris Fashion Week, whilst also running a business, saltuslabel.com.au. Go check it out. She does amazing things whilst I'm mucking around, wasting time in here fighting with ants. So yeah, she's doing all that with a baby strapped to her, and we're actually going over to Paris tomorrow. Yeah. So after a beautiful 2 months of trekking around Europe in a van with a baby and my lovely lady, it was time to come back to reality and fix the bus that we had at home so that one day we could venture off and travel Australia in our beautiful bus. Rightio, so we're back at the bus today, and as it turns out, 37 years of having a roof rack sitting over a metal roof like this tends to cause a little bit of rust. So I thought I was done with all my rust adventures, but I've got a little bit more to do. So I thought with this last little patch of rust that I'm fixing, I thought I'd give a little bit of a demonstration of what I've been using to fix something like this. So one of the first things that you're going to need to do if you want to do any type of work like this is, first of all, you're going to have to smash off all the rust that you've got. So I usually start off with a grinder. Grind as much of it off as you can. If you've got holes anywhere, pull it up, like bend the outsides of it off, and really dig in with it underneath just to smash all of that rust off. Second of all, you want to go around it with a drill or a rattler with a wire wheel. Clean all that off. You can see I've used this one to death. So then the third thing you want to go and do is you want to go around it with 80 grit sandpaper, working down to about 200 grit sandpaper. Once you've smashed off all the rust and you've got it looking really nice, go over it with this rust converter. I would highly recommend not getting this in your eyes, because there was one little bit on the side there where a big flap of metal had come up, and I was just slapping some of this on, and then the metal flicked up and flicked it into my eyes, and it nearly blinded me. So I wouldn't recommend getting this stuff in your eyes. It is phosphoric acid and it will mess up your eyes. So it's for converting metal back to rust. No, converting rust back to metal, not for eyeballs. So once you've sanded everything off, slap it with a bit of this. Even you can wipe it on with a cloth, and then let that sit for about 2 to 3 hours. And then what will happen is these orange little bits of rust, and sometimes there's little specks that you can't get with a grinder or a sander or a wire wheel. And what that'll do is that will convert it back to like a black deoxidized piece of metal. And then after that, you can hit it with some Hirsch paint. And Hirsch paint is the best stuff I've come across. I've tried and tested a whole bunch of different brands of things claiming that they can stop rust, and nothing has been as successful as this stuff. It is very hard to come by, it's very expensive. Again, don't get this on your hands either, because it doesn't come off for about a month. What I've done here is I've shaved all of the rust off. I've covered it in 2 layers of this, giving about 2 to 3 hours in between time to dry off. And it claims that you can paint this directly over rust, and whilst you can, I'd recommend obviously sanding as much of it off as you can before that. But yeah, they have recently rebranded from Hirsch Miracle Paint to a POR 15, POR 15. and it is absolutely amazing. It comes in black, clear, or white. What I've got on the bus at the moment is the clear version of that, and I'll give you a close-up of what that looks like now. So we've got a pretty big hole here, and we've got another hole in there. As you can see, I've fiberglassed part of this hole, but didn't quite get in all these cracks, so I've got to re-go over all this. And as you can see, this has Bill Hirsch Miracle Paint, and this part does not, because that's still got the acid primer on from whenever this thing came out of the factory. So today I'm going to demonstrate how to fill these with fiberglass and then prime over them and paint them, and hopefully have your rig looking a little bit tidier than this one. You'll need a board of some kind for your fiberglass. You'll need some gauze tape to cover up the hole and give a bit of a outward layer of where you want it to end. A knife, a putty thing, some fiberglass, and some hardener. The reason that I use fiberglass, and this is a good or bad thing depending on how you think about it, is as opposed to builder's bog or any other type of bog, it's not granulated, it's actually fibrous. And so whilst it's a lot harder to sand, I find it a lot better to work with. And once you've painted over it, sometimes builder's bog, if you leave it out in the sun, which in Australia there's lots of it, so the builder's bog actually gets a little bit hot, and then the paint starts to peel away a little bit easier. I find that paint tends to stick to fiberglass a little bit better. So I'm going to start off by getting just some plastic gauze tape. As soon as I find the end of it, cut a piece of gauze tape to size. So one thing you got to know with working with fiberglass is sometimes the first layer isn't going to be enough. So this is very much a cycle of slapping it on, sanding it back, slapping it on, sanding it back. And if you don't believe me on how good this can look, I actually recreated the entire back bumper of this car with fiberglass and like little metal brackets on the inside that I've just sort of built the fiberglass around, sanded it back, and it looks good. It looks better than it did, so that's good. Wearing gloves is a game changer. Crack open your fiberglass, grab out a little bit that you think you need, and obviously following the actual mixing ratios on the side of the tin. I've been using this for long enough, I can kind of eyeball it, but in my experience, a little bit more hardener is better than less. Yeah. So, when working with fiberglass, it's kind of like working with cake batter. So you want to sort of fold it in, because it's fibrous. If you sort of mix it around like that, it kind of all splinters out, and then it becomes a lot harder to work with, especially when it starts to dry a little bit. And so the reason I'm doing this tonight as opposed to tomorrow is because it's going to be 37 degrees tomorrow. And when I was recreating the back bumper, I only had like 30 seconds time to actually work with the material that I was using before it dried completely. So it was a lot harder to work with. So on a cold day, obviously not a wet day, is a better time to do this. So once you've got a fairly evenly textured bog, grab a little bit on your knife or a lot of it on your knife, and we will climb up here. All right, and the first thing that I like to do, just wipe that bit off the bottom, and because we're working in with the gutter, just smear it straight into the gap there. And it doesn't need to be pretty, doesn't need to be even. Obviously that helps. A little bit more, because it's better to have used more than less, because you're going to be sanding it back after this anyway. So you want to really fill in all those gaps that you can. Any excess you wipe off. But yeah, the more you mess with it, the harder it gets to work with. So yeah, try and get it all in one smooth run if you can. So that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. I think I can sand that back to make a very smooth texture. So I'm happy with that one. Hoppa. Let's jump over this side. We'll get a big glob for this one. And again, just smear it straight into that hole. We want to make sure that it's all filling in nicely. And then we can bevel it out this way, bevel it out that way. Obviously I've gone a little bit overboard there. So it doesn't look pretty. It doesn't look perfect right now. Obviously try to smooth it out as best you can. I'm gonna have another crack at this bit here. Actually bring it up over that as well, because we had a little bit of unevenness in there. Alright. And working averagely quickly at this is a good thing as well, because this does dry pretty quick. And then for the gutters, I just like to run my finger through the bottom, really make sure that you're getting an even coverage on that. And if you've ever worked with something like grout, fiberglass, or anything like this before, sometimes it's best not to wipe it away when it's still wet. This would actually be easier to sand back than it would be to wipe off and try and make it a bit cleaner. I mean, you can try, especially if you've got gloves, give it a crack. I'll give you a close-up of what this looks like so you can see how ugly it is. Now, before any of you rust experts hit me up and say, no, it's not how you do it. I know it's not how you do it, but I can't afford to get this done properly. So I'm just doing what I can to keep the rust out and hopefully provide a budget solution for those of us that like old cars but don't know how to deal with the rust holes that they come with. So that's the next one. Alright, so starting off with a big glob, filling in that hole straight away, wiping off the excess, and then beveling out over top so that you can sand it flush, or as flush as you can. The main thing here is to not be perfect and use more than you think. Beautiful. Absolutely horrific. Love it. Wouldn't have it any other way. So this hasn't actually dried as quickly as I'd wanted it to. I mean, it's relatively dry, but not quite dry enough. And if you jump to sanding too quickly, then it all just peels up and doesn't give you a very clean or smooth result. So the other thing is, if I start sanding this back tonight, I'm also going to have to spray it tonight, because I'll most likely take off some of the Hirsch paint that I've put on here already. And if that happens and I don't cover it up with an etch primer or more Hirsch paint, then it's going to rust away, and that rust is going to oxidize, and once you put the paint over it, that rust is just going to come back through anyway. So I'm going to leave it to dry overnight, and then I'll sand it back tomorrow, give it a good prime. It's supposed to be 37 degrees tomorrow, so fingers crossed I can put the last coat of paint on this bus and be done. So this is the result of 60 grit sandpaper. As you can see, it's pretty smooth. See these little holes in here? These will need to be taken out, just because this is a bit of like loose fiberglass that hasn't quite set properly. So get a little needle or drill bit and dig those out so that the paint doesn't flake out underneath them. And after that, we'll go over with a bit of 100 then 200 grit sandpaper, and that should get all these little holes out so there's no little pockets of air underneath our paint here. But other than that, it's pretty smooth. And up here we've got something slightly similar, just a little dip in there where obviously I've put fiberglass in there, and because there's a big gaping hole underneath, it's sort of sunk down, and then a layer on top has come in just for this little hole here. So might have to go over that with another little bit of fiberglass just to fill that in. But other than that, that's pretty smooth, and I'm pretty happy with that, so I don't really mind. And same again here. Might need a little bit of extra fiberglass just to fill in some of these little holes, but I'll have to dig those out first just to make sure there's no little cavities underneath. And yeah, ultimately I'm pretty happy with that. If you're Raptor coating like me, you shouldn't need to worry too much about these little holes. Obviously dig them out so that there's no little dust spots in them, but the paint should fill it if it's high fill enough. So yeah. So this is after a bit of etch primer and sanding back those little holes. I did put a little bit more fiberglass in there, and yeah, it's looking alright. The Raptor coat that I'm going to put on over top of this should be able to fill in those holes pretty nicely, considering the texture of the stuff is pretty forgiving. So this is the final product here, as you can probably see, or hopefully not see, because I think it's covered it up really bloody well. I'm really happy with how that turned out. I can't even really tell that there's fiberglass sitting under that. So I'm pretty stoked with that, to be honest. And whilst this isn't a long-term solution, and I know there's gonna be some people in the comments saying, oh, you can't use fiberglass to fix that. Well, I can, and I did, and you can't really tell, and I'm happy with it. And the main thing is, it's not leaking water into the car anymore, causing me more problems. So I see it as an absolute win. And I don't know how to weld. I'll admit it, I don't know how to weld. It's hard, it's really hard. I tried welding once, and I'll show you about how well that went. So as you can see, I'm not that good at welding, because the wheel fell off on the drift trike and I absolutely smashed myself, and it was awesome. So I made that drift trike when I was like 14, by the way, and welding was not my speciality, and it still isn't. And honestly, welding's hard. Anyone that can do it, power to you. I support it. I'd love to be able to do it one day, but I can't. So if you're like me and you can't weld and you need to fix a hole in your car to stop rust coming in, this is a solution for something like that. Yes, I probably could have welded it, and I probably could have put some high fill over top of it, and then the rust probably would have just come back anyway, because it would have taken me way longer to do that. So yeah, I'm sure that there are some panel beating experts out there that absolutely lost their marbles watching this. I don't blame you. So instead of dogging what I did and the processes that I took to achieve what I'm doing today, drop in the comments below some recommendations, some tools, tips, tricks, painters, sealers, anything that you know is going to help people that are watching this video get a better result, because that's what this is all about. I'm trying to help people fix their cars that they love on a budget. And honestly, I see this as a win. I think it works. There's no water leaking into the car anymore, and we've got a safe and sealed bus with no ants in it for like the first time in ages. So I'm really stoked. If you have any constructive criticism for me or tips and tricks to help others, drop them below and let's start a discussion about it. Let's be grown-ups, okay? You can dog on it if you want, but just know that you're a child. And if you hated how I did this, then good, stay tuned, because you're about to see how I sprayed this whole bus with a $70 paint sprayer. So I'm sure you'll love that one. So if you like this video and you'd like me to make a video for you or take some photos for your company or brand, then get in touch at www.mahimedia.au. I've just started up a professional page where I'm hoping to start a little bit more freelancing stuff. And yeah, when we drive around Australia, I'll be taking on jobs for that as well. Otherwise, if you'd like to support the channel in any other way, you can go and check out the wonderful things that my lady Kate creates with materials a little bit softer than fiberglass, where she makes beautiful silkware, and you can check out her collection at www.soltislabel.com.au.